It's been a hot minute, but guess what? We're back, y'all. Welcome to the official reboot of Passion Projects. I'm Payal, and I get the honor of sharing inspiring stories of individuals from all walks of life who've been able to turn their passions into their careers. We'll dive deeper into what drives them, the dreams they're chasing, and how they've made it all a reality. And my first guest is no exception. Desirée Dupuis is a passionate social entrepreneur, brand builder, and changemaker with over 20 years of experience in storytelling, marketing, and purpose-driven leadership. She's the founder of Vose & Co., an ethical, sustainable vegan footwear brand, and Cove Ocean Foods, a seaweed-based food company on a mission to make kelp a climate savior. A lifelong advocate for animals and the planet, Desirée has been living a vegan lifestyle since 2008 and uses her voice to drive sustainable change. She's also co-founded Rubens Shoe Society, an international NGO providing education to over 700 students in the Dominican Republic. Recently, she published Consciously Chic, a playbook of ethical fashion, and was featured at the Vegan Women's Summit. Through every project, Desirée proves that business can be a powerful force for good. So without further ado, let's get into our conversation with Desirée. Okay, we're here. Yay! That's great. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me here on Passion Projects. I am so honored to have you as my first guest on the show.
Wow, it is such an honor to be here and to chat with you. I'm super grateful and thank you so much for having me. I'm excited for our conversation.
Yeah, me too. I want to begin the conversation by first asking you what is bringing you joy right now?
Well, I'm currently living in Bali, and so it feels like I'm living in a video game. I think the most joy I get is riding around on my little scooter and
Love that.
getting to go to Pilates classes. And then I'm living in this area in Bali called Canggu, and I've been here for almost 8 months, I guess. And so I have friends, and so I ride my little scooter down the street, and I go for coffee with one friend, and then I see like run into two other friends, and yeah, it's just bringing me a lot of joy to be having like been brave enough to come to Bali without knowing anybody here and now have made friends and have like a whole lifestyle that is really supportive of everything that I love in life. It's such a supportive place to be for veganism. There's so much accessible, nourishing, healthy, whole vegan foods, so many vegan restaurants, and such a health and wellness focused community. So yeah, it feels really supportive.
I absolutely love that. And like one of the things when, learning about you, you're an entrepreneur and you're a vegan activist as well, and being in that community where you get to thrive living in an environment that has abundance of vegan food. I mean, you say in 2008 you became vegan. What inspired you to make that leap to go ahead and become vegan?
It was never in my plans. I was just kind of like ignorant to the whole animal agriculture industry. And essentially, a coworker of mine had told me that she wasn't putting milk in her coffee. And I was always very interested in nutrition. And so I said, well, why aren't you putting milk in your coffee anymore? And she said, well, I read this book called Skinny Bitch, and it talked about how basically, like from the dairy process, milk contains like, sorry, like warning, but like blood and pus from like the wounds that are created from the cows that are milked by the machines. And I was like, oh my God. Okay, this sounds like a book that I really need to read. And then very shortly after that conversation, I was actually going on vacation to Maui, and I was at the Vancouver International Airport, and I saw Skinny Bitch in one of the little convenience stores. And so I picked up the book Skinny Bitch, which was actually written by two vegans. And most of the book contains information about nutrition, like chemicals, aspartame, just mostly about like if you want to be healthy, like with your body, with your brain, you really have to like pay attention to what you're putting in your body. And I always kind of like, I was definitely always of that mindset anyways. And then in the middle of the book, there was a very, very graphic chapter about slaughterhouses. And it was the first time in my life that I made the connection of where the chicken or the steak or meat on my plate actually, like the process it goes through to become that, and that it's actually, you know, a living, breathing, sentient animal. And I was just absolutely horrified. um it was like a light switch. Like, I stopped eating meat and I basically went vegan from that moment. I stopped wearing leather, I stopped consuming animal products. I really made the connection between like this beautiful animal and, you know, like what we were doing it to it to for it to become our clothing or our food. And luckily I was with my best friend at the time, who's a huge animal lover. When we were younger, she thought she might become like a vet, and I told her, like, if you read this, you'll never eat meat again. And I went to have a shower, and I came back. She had read only like 3 or 4 pages of the book. And both of us from that moment have been like vegan. So yeah, it was a very, very defining moment in my life. And I'm so grateful that she was with me and had the same kind of like heart and mindset and values, that it was just like immediate for us. Like, it wasn't like a question. It was just like, we read the information, it went straight into our brains. We were horrified. And like, yeah, I've had her, because it hasn't been necessarily like I'm the only one in my family. I'm usually the only one in a group of friends or in community that has chosen a vegan lifestyle. And so to have her go through the journey with me, it's been like a game changer.
I can relate to you so much because
Yeah.
most of the time it's me as the token vegan as well, right? So I'm always calling ahead to my mom, being like, hey, I'm coming for dinner. Please make sure that there's a vegan option for me or something that I
Right.
can offer. Like, you're always checking the menu as well, just to so there is something. Because like you, I grew up vegetarian my whole life, and it was only in the last, I would say, 7 years that I changed to becoming a vegan, understanding more of what you were saying about, like, you know, the harm that the cows go through. Like, I remember for me, cheese was one of the biggest things to give up, but then just understanding it, and like even ice cream, it was just so hard for me to like comprehend that this is what is happening to like these animals who, like, why? Like, I would question, like, there's no need for this. Like, there's alternatives to everything. Why can't we just factor, and like, why can't we just stick to those alternatives for sure? Um, so I completely understand what you're saying, and can totally relate. And you've taken it a step further too. I mean, it wasn't just food. You then went on to fashion as well, right? Like, I know you have a love for fashion, and like, I'd love for you to have our listeners or tell us the story about how you got into fashion and being like a social entrepreneur, but in the footwear scene.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, to me, for me, the food part of being vegan was never a problem. Like, I said, kind of, that, you know, I love fruits and vegetables. I eat a lot of salad. I love fresh whole food. So for me, like, aside from like being around other people and having to, like, you know, have my vegan diet, for myself personally, it was never an issue. But what I did find challenging was actually trying, like, to like not wearing leather. Not wearing leather was more of like a challenge for me, because, you know, nice designer shoes are made from leather, but nice designer bags are made from leather. And yeah, as a woman, I love shoes, and being from Canada, and so I think you might be able to relate. But basically, I had one shoe store. I was shopping at Spring, which is, you know, the cheap sister store to Aldo.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was before they even had like vegan on their label, because they were naturally vegan, because they were cheap, because they were made with synthetic petroleum based materials like polyurethane or PVC. And so yeah, over the years, I was just like kind of frustrated with the fact that I could only shop at one store for my shoes. And then I watched Cowspiracy in 2015, and it was around the time when the environmental movement was really starting to pick up. And I understood, I obviously shared that I went vegan for the animals, but around 2015, I basically kind of like recommitted to veganism for the planet, because I was eating a bit of seafood in my diet. Like, I was eating some sushi and some fish. And so yeah, but I was still not wearing leather. So it's hard. Like, I feel like I was like following a vegan lifestyle, but with my diet, there were
Mhm.
like certain things that maybe I was still eating, you know, salmon or tuna with sashimi. But anyway, so yeah, I just didn't feel good about the fact that I was like, okay, great, I'm not wearing, you know, leather from animals, but now I'm wearing petroleum based products in my shoes that I didn't feel good about, because obviously they're extremely harmful for the environment. And so, yeah, over time, and I've been an entrepreneur for many, many years. I actually started my first business the same year that I went vegan in 2008. I actually started my own business with that same best friend, Kelly, that I mentioned. And so I was already, and we went on to start an international charity, doing work in the Dominican as well. So I was already very much working for myself, working as like a problem solver, working as an entrepreneur. And yeah, as this issue became a bigger pain point in my life, the other thing that was happening was that, you might have experienced this as well, is every time I used to go out for dinner a lot because I was in the financial services industry and I was building my business. I was networking. I'm an extrovert. I was like always out for dinner. And every time I went out for dinner, the server would always come over and, one of the first things they do is tell you the specials that are on the menu. And 99.9% of the time, those specials are not vegan, and they're actually kind of like the more horrifying types of meat and dairy options. And I always wished in that moment that I had something like an icon or a brand that I could wear that would identify me, like a little label that I'm vegan. Like, I don't need to hear the specials, because I'm Canadian and polite. And so as soon as they would start talking, I felt like I wanted to be kind. I didn't want to interrupt them. But in my heart, I was screaming like I'm not going to eat that. I don't want to eat that. That's gross. So yeah, I realized that there's no global iconic brand that represents veganism the way that Nike represents fitness and athleticism, or Lululemon for health and wellness. And so it's like, I'm craving a vegan brand that I can wear, and not just activisms like show up to dinner in a shirt that says don't kill animals or whatever, you know what I mean? But just like a subtle, like a brand that represents the values that I have. And so that my need for a brand that represented veganism and my pain point of the lack of designer shoes not made of animal products and not made of plastics was where Vose & Co. Came together and was created. And yeah, I've had the idea since around 2015, 2016, and it's just been a passion project
Love
for
that.
for many years into COVID, into 2020 is when January of 2020 was when I actually paid a manufacturer in New York to make me my very first prototype. And then, of course, like a month later, their factory shut down. So yeah, it's just been like a really long, fun journey of creating this brand. I did a Kickstarter campaign in 2020, I think it was, when I finally got my prototype. And then 2 years ago, I actually went full-time with this business. So yeah, so it's become
Yay.
my full-time focus since 2023. And yeah, we're making designer shoes with next generation plant-based materials.
That's truly amazing. And like something that was a need and a need in the market, and you were able to like really fulfill that for sure. And of late, I've, been seeing some of your Instagrams too, and you're like really big on advocating for cutting back on plastics and ways in which people can go about doing that just in their day-to-day lives as well. And so I feel like I relate so much, and like I'm like, yes, preach. Like, what you're saying people should be doing it, taking active stance for the environment, because the world right now is just not in a good place. And so if we can do just little things to make it better, it'd be fantastic.
Yeah, I think I'm a preacher of the fact that we have autonomy. Like, we are consumers. Like, things only exist in the world when we buy them. And I know it sounds cliche now because a lot of people say it, but literally every dollar you spend is a vote for the kind of world you want to see. Because literally, if nobody buys my shoes, I can't continue. Like, I will go out of business. And so the same thing for, large companies. If people stop buying from Shein, they are no longer going to be able to, have a business. Or so I think it's just like a lot of education, and we're in a place in our lives where it's almost overwhelming, the amount of education. But I think we need to like curate our feeds or curate our information so that we can be more mindful and conscious with even just learning about our clothes, you know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
I really do believe that the plastic problem we're encountering is one of the biggest epidemics of our lives. Like the research is showing that microplastics are like, like in our bloodstream and in other, like I was I follow a fertility doctor, and she was mentioning something about like even like beyond even just in our bloodstream, but just in our bodies, and I think in like in utero and things like that. Like it's one of the problems that I believe is killing us, and it's everywhere. And so to me, plastic is a huge problem I want to help to overcome. And I think people are becoming. You even mentioned it, that you look at labels and you're trying to buy, if it's not cotton or organic cotton, then like even just our own personal health,
Yep.
we want to be wearing materials that are supportive of our personal health. And so maybe if it's not even just for the planet, just for ourselves personally, looking at materials and foods and products that are actually supporting our own personal health as well.
Most definitely. Yeah. I mean, I go into the grocery stores too, and like one of the first things I do is checking the back of the ingredients list. And if I'm seeing a paragraph of ingredients or things that I can't even pronounce, it's going back on
Yeah.
the shelf because like I don't want to be consuming that. I don't want my son to be consuming it as well. So yeah, I mean, there's change, but it's happening in a gradual pace as well. And now with all of the turmoil and like the tariffs and there's just so much uncertainty in this
Yeah.
world, and like uh, I want to know from your standpoint too. I mean, how do you navigate through the uncertainty, especially being an entrepreneur and having your own business?
I mean, I think for me, I've been blessed with a mindset that I have actually been able to live very much in the present. So, and especially through like a spiritual practice of meditation and everything that I do to support my mental health, I'm pretty good at staying in the present and just focusing on like what is actually in my control. And if I can control it, then what are the things that I can do within my control? And if it's out of my control, then it's a waste of energy to like spend time worrying about it. And I know that's easier said than done for many people, but luckily again for me, I've like have access to so many modalities, so many coaches, so many teachers, so many healers, learning ways to like, if I am feeling anxious, to take care of like my body, like somatic healing. I do a lot of workouts that involve movement and dance and stuff like that. And so, yeah, I think for me, it's just about focusing on what I can actually control, and also having like pretty good boundaries around the information and access to me that is not serving. If there's a lot of doom and gloom, or like I don't go on the internet, like if I see like for example, even stuff that is real for me, like the tariffs and whatever, you know what I mean? It's like the word that we've been doing for the last 5 years. It's like you have to just pivot. I got to figure it out.
Yeah,
And so whatever is thrown at me, it's just like, okay. And that's why being an entrepreneur is not for everybody. Like it is not for the faint of heart. There are many different types of people's personalities. Some people really value security and like, what's the word I'm looking for? Just like knowing, like predictability, right? Like I'm very comfortable with change, with
yeah.
unpredictability, with the up and down and all around. And so I feel like I'm buckled into my roller coaster and I'm just ready to get thrown all around. I'm not saying that it's easy, and I don't have my moments where it's very challenging, but that's when I really have to like, and thank goodness that I'm in Bali and like supported. And to me, that's why like my focus on my health and wellness is my number one priority, because then I can tackle all of these external elements and know that within my body and within myself, I can feel safe.
Definitely. I was gonna ask too, like, I mean, saying that and having that mindset and navigating through everything, for you, being an entrepreneur, where did that passion for entrepreneurship come from?
I think it's just in my DNA. Like I was blessed to
Awesome.
be born and raised by a very, very supportive, loving family. So I think in the back of my mind and subconsciously, I can take big risks because I do know that I have, the safety net of loving parents that still live in the same house that I grew up in. But I know that they would say from a young age, like I've just always been a very bold, audacious, speak my mind, live my life my own way. If everybody's choosing to eat their ice cream with a spoon, I'm going to use a fork. Like, I just always like to go against the grain and carve out my own path. And so I think that that's what I mean. Like a lot of our personalities are, who we are, but also influenced by our environments. And so I think it's like definitely 80% of maybe 60 to 80% of who I naturally am. And then the other percent of like just being so well cared for in my environment, giving me the confidence to feel like I can do anything that I want to do. Like, I really do feel like I have a lot of confidence, and that was because of like the way I was raised as well, always empowered to go for it, and to have that feeling of support and love.
That that I echo those same sentiments as well. I mean, I feel like parents, and I feel like growing up, you never really realize it, but they provide such an impact on your life. And just like you, my parents have lived in the same house since I was living there as well. So there's something about being grounded in that structured place that I've always known too, and then them guiding us through and helping us navigate the challenges as well. But, just being able to help us through it all, it's truly, I credit them as well for like my upbringing and how I've been able to navigate through. And yeah, just like you, just go against the grain too. I mean, I remember growing up in the Indian culture, it's always like, become a doctor, a lawyer, or a dentist. I was like, that is not me. I was never good at math. I was more into the arts, more into being creative. And I was just like, Mom, that is not me. I will not be doing that. And I took a whole nother route, and I went down the way of, becoming an on-air talent, or just trying to figure out what it would like to be in production or television or radio. And that just allowed me to, yeah, just like you, carve out your own path and find a way through it.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like I've also been very in tune with my intuition and what feels good. And I'm grateful for the fact that I'm able to be like, does this feel good? Yes, this feels good. I'm going for it. Oh, this doesn't feel good. Like, I quit my job on a whim one day because I was just having stress in my jaw. And I was like, I am way too young to be experiencing like health consequences from stress. I was in my 20s. I was 27. It was the same job where I had that coworker where she stopped drinking milk, and I left that job and ended up working for myself. But I don't stand for things that don't feel good or support my health.
I love that you realized that so early in your life too. I mean, like, I recently left my job and I felt like I was going through some health things too. And after leaving, I felt so free. I was like, wow, I think this is what was really getting me down. And it's so great that, you're able to pinpoint and realize that at such a young age too. Kudos to you. That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's like a saying that says like, you don't really care about your health until you don't have your health. Like, if you are not healthy, then your health becomes your number one priority, right? And so it's like, I don't want to get to the point where, like, I'm so unhealthy that I always want to make my health my number one priority. And then from there, from a healthy position, then you can do all the different things that you want to do because you're in a healthy state of mind and your body is healthy. But once you lose that, then it's like you could be too far gone, or like it's too late or whatever. And I never want to get to that position. I've always really, really valued my health.
100%. I mean, that is huge. That's like, yes, you need your health. And especially as we grow too, as we go through the seasons in life, there's just so many different things and conditions that we're going through. And 100%, I couldn't agree more. I mean, sticking with that too, on top of everything else that you are doing, you're co-founder of Rubens Shoe Society. I'd love to know what inspired you to step into that world of education and global impact.
Yeah, I mean, again, it was like never one of these things that I had planned. It was a very organic story. My best friend Kelly, who went vegan with me in 2008, she had started sponsoring a boy named Ruben. And so he lived in the Dominican Republic, and he was 3 years old when she started sponsoring him. So every 6 months or every year, she would get new updated pictures of Ruben. And we were roommates for quite a long time as well. And so we always had a picture of Ruben on our fridge. And in 2012, when Ruben was 11, Kelly was going on vacation to the Dominican Republic. And so she reached out to World Vision, who she was sponsoring him through, and asked, like, I'm going to be on vacation with my mom in the Dominican. I've been sponsoring Ruben for like 10 years now. Like, what are the chances that I could meet him? And they actually accommodated her. So she video blogged her whole experience of being in the Dominican and getting to meet her sponsor child, Ruben. And of course, she got to go to his home and see his living conditions. He had 9 brothers and sisters. The small home they were living in, like, didn't have electricity. The dirt was their flooring. She took him out for lunch. It was his very first time in a restaurant. And he didn't even barely eat his lunch. He packed it up and brought it home to his family. And a lot of the children in his village were not wearing shoes. They didn't have shoes. And she the whole time she just thought this boy, this 11-year-old boy is no different than any boy at home in Canada. Yet his circumstances that he's living in are dramatically different. And she learned that in the Dominican and many other countries around the world, if children don't have shoes, they aren't able to go to school and for many families, even like Ruben's, like they have 9, 10 children, they need shoes, school supplies, uniforms, like all these things to support their children, to enable them to go to school. And they just don't have the means to do that. And so she came back from that trip. She came back as like an alive person, had found a passion, and had a passion she fell in love with the people of the Dominican, fell in love with Ruben and his family, had a passion that was born in her to want to help the people that she had met. And so she came to me and said, I want to start a project and collect some gently used shoes to send over to the Dominican to help kids like Ruben in the Dominican go to school. And I want to call it Ruben Shoes. Will you help me? And I said, yes, I think this is going to be way bigger than you expect, but of course I will help you. And within 6 months, we were shipping a container with 13,000 pairs of shoes to the Dominican Republic. Over the next 5 years, we would send 100,000 pairs of shoes to different countries around the world, including Zimbabwe and Guinea. And and then through that process of being on the ground in the Dominican, giving shoes to local children and their families, we met a woman who was had basically turned her small little apartment complex into a school because there's no other school nearby. She was struggling to keep her school operational because she was trying to charge tuition because it was a private school basically, and none of the families could afford it. And so again, very synchronistically, before we had gone on that trip, we had one of our super volunteer families say to Kelly, like, if you ever start a project or like a sponsor program like what you were doing with Ruben, we would love to be involved. And we said, no, like we're not doing it. We're just giving some shoes. You know what I mean? And sure enough, when we went to give shoes on the ground in the Dominican, we had met this woman, and she had 24 students that basically all needed sponsorship to help support their tuition to go to school and pay the teachers. And so we already knew there was a family in Canada, in Coquitlam, that would sponsor the first student. And that's how it started. So that was in 2013. Ruben Shoes was started, and essentially like I said, we sent over 100,000 pairs of shoes around the world, but most specifically, we started our education sponsorship program. We got all 24 of those students sponsored by families in Canada. We rebuilt the elementary school, which then hosted 300 students. And then because those students were growing up to be 12, 13, 14 years old, we then bought land down the road and built a secondary school. So now we run 2 private elementary school and a secondary school. And we have close to 700 students in our school curriculum program. And now, because our students are 17 and 18, we implemented a trade school. So we're giving them vocational training to go right into quality work, either in the medical system, hospitality, or gastronomy. And yeah, it was all inspired by this little boy, Ruben, who, by the way, his brother, we've now sponsored to, is like 24 and is now just living with Kelly in Canada. And Kelly just saw Ruben with her own son a couple weeks ago over spring break while she was in the Dominican doing work to support our schools. So yeah, it's like became a full international NGO with like, it was like little by little over the last 10 years. And the last thing I'll say is 2 years ago, I think it was, our school was recognized by the top, the Dominican Republic Ministry of Education had an award ceremony for the top schools in the country, and our school received a silver medal at that award ceremony. So we are literally providing the highest level of education for impoverished children in the Dominican Republic.
That's truly amazing. I mean, it must just warm your heart. Like, I mean, how does that feel to just know the impact and the difference that you're making in the lives of like I'm sure more than 700 kids out there.
Well, yeah, and we employ, I think, almost 80 staff now. And so it's just like had such a dramatic impact in that community. And honestly, it just feels, great, but it also feels like I do feel it's in many parts of my life that I'm just kind of like a vessel for it. Like it felt like with Ruben Shoes, it felt like, I always describe it as like when you're at a concert and there's like the balls that are floating around at the concert. And Ruben Shoes felt just like a big ball that we were just like, I just like got to be a really big part of like guiding it, because there were so many people that helped. Like all of our education sponsors, we had, people like the Michael Bublé and his family, when their grandmother passed away, it was at the time when we needed to build a kitchen at our elementary school. And so in lieu of flowers, when their Nona passed away, their Noni, we built, in honor of Michael Bublé's grandmother, we built Noni's Kitchen, which now feeds all of our elementary schools one hot meal every single day. And so it's like so much bigger than just, like myself. It obviously feels tremendous, but it's like so many different people have made an impact and been a part of the journey.
Yeah, it's huge. It's amazing. Have you had a chance yourself to go down there that's amazing.
Yeah, I've been multiple times. I sponsored 2 of our students, and we just did our 10-year anniversary celebration a year and a half ago. So we took a group of 20 of us down there, and yeah, that was the first time, because we built the elementary, or the new secondary school was built through COVID. That was my first time being there in about 4 or 5 years. But Kelly goes at least 2 to 3 times a year. And yeah, I've probably been maybe 5 or 6 times in total.
Wow. Yeah, no.
See the progress and see our students who were like 4 years old that are now 14, 15. So yeah, it's been really remarkable.
What is it like to see the change and the progression in them as well?
That is the most empowering part, because we also have initiated an English learning program. And so many of our students, like, to see their confidence, to see them speaking English, to see them thriving in school. We have a very supportive arts program. So to see them, like be like playing instruments, being in band, doing dance, and just to really like we sit with the students, because with our sponsors, the sponsors obviously have like a 2-way relationship. They get to write letters, they get to get updates from our students. And so when I was there a year and a half ago, I did the sponsor updates with all of our students. And one of the number one things that they say is how safe they feel in the school. And so we've provided them, you take it for granted that you would have like a clean place to go to school with clean bathrooms, and like teachers that you feel safe and secure with, that actually care for your well-being. And so having that environment for our students and seeing them being able to grow and thrive, and literally feeling like they are absolutely no different than any other 14-year-old that I've met around the world is like, I think, definitely the most rewarding part. Yeah.
It's truly amazing. Like, you were doing such amazing work.
Yeah.
Like,
Thank you.
yeah,
Thank
that's
you.
awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm shifting from the social impact back to food, I would say. You've launched Cove Ocean Foods as well. So what drew you to, I guess, the power of kelp and the seafood industry?
Yeah, I mean, that was another thing that just like came to me,
Yeah.
it was during COVID. I was doing nothing but like meditating and focusing on my health. And I got a text one day from one of my mentors, and he just said, I have an opportunity for you. It aligns with all your values. And because I am somebody who really lives with my values, many people know that I am vegan, I care about the animals, I care about the environment. And so he worked in CPG in the food industry and food manufacturing his whole career. And so he was getting invited to join a seaweed farming company. They wanted to, based on Vancouver Island, and they were looking to basically create and launch a food brand with the seaweed that they were growing with kelp. And so he basically invited me to join with him because they wanted to have like somebody that could be more of like the face of the brand. And he could take all of his, learnings and expertise and basically channel them through me and help mentor me to like help build this food brand. And so, yeah, that's how I joined Cascadia Seaweed in 2020. And then at the time we didn't have like Cove didn't exist. It was like we needed to come up with the ideation, create the brand, work with food scientists, different like food producers to even like figure out how we can make tasty, delicious food with freshly grown seaweed. So that was a very, very challenging and complicated process. And yeah, that was the birth of Cove. And that was actually how I started to become a digital nomad and work remotely, because I was living in Vancouver, downtown Vancouver, but I was working. The company was based in Victoria on Vancouver Island. And so by default, I was working remotely online and then I ended up at that same time, I actually ended up moving into a house with 10 other people during COVID. And so I was building this food brand while living in a house with people that had come home from Bali because of COVID and set up this like co-working, co-living environment. And so that's where the seeds of like digital nomadism kind of like were planted. And then, so then a long story short, I ended up, 2.5 years later, the Cascadia was shifting focus for what they wanted to do with the seaweed and didn't want to focus on the food brand. And so I ended up taking over ownership of the food brand, and I brought in some new partners that had a lot of experience in CPG. And so then that's how I became the owner of Cove and founder of Cove.
That's awesome. I mean, and
Yeah.
then, I mean, living the digital nomad lifestyle too. I mean,
Yeah.
has it been challenging, or has it been, how do you navigate through the back and forth? Everything is pretty
Yeah.
seamless.
No, it was like, I mean, luckily enough, that situation was, like just a ferry ride away. And so there were times where I could like go. I mean, but during COVID, it was like, a bit more challenging. We weren't actually allowed to be together, or when we were in masks and stuff like that. But I think like, obviously, I think the biggest part is like the community feeling and like the relationship building. Nothing is as impactful or as effective as like actually being able to like be together in person, in meetings, build relationships with people in person. So that part of it, and just like being fully remote online can be challenging, when you're just like literally just like everything you do is on your computer, all your conversations with coworkers is just like digital. So there is that kind of like, I don't know. It's exhausting, I guess you could say, in a sense. There's this, you know what I mean? Like
Yes.
it's not tangible. It's digital, so there is that component. But I mean, it is still amazing what we can do and get done without actually having to be in person with people. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, but yeah, and I think I omitted just saying the fact that like, when my friend Carlo first invited me, his text was like, it aligns with all your values, and so when I learned about seaweed, it's obviously vegan, it grows in the ocean, it's extremely environmentally friendly, it's so good for the planet to plant and grow seaweed, and it was building a nutritious based, environmentally friendly food brand. And I've always considered myself a marketing person, especially a branding person. And the kicker for me was like, through all my work with Reuben Shoes, I did start to learn about the poverty that exists within Canada with our, First Nations community. And so with Cascadia, they were building seaweed farms and growing seaweed in partnership with First Nations. And so to me, that was also like something that was extremely important. So literally, it was just like this gift that came to me in a text, in June of 2020, when I was literally absolutely doing nothing. So it just gives me a lot of like evidence to support, again, like a spiritual practice. Like I was meditating for 1 hour a day, focused on my health, running, not worried about this like pandemic that, it was coming in, and just focused on my own thing, on my own health. And like literally 2020 was one of the best years of my life. I changed my whole life. I don't think I would be living in Bali right now if I hadn't moved in with the people I moved in with during COVID, if I hadn't had this opportunity to join the seaweed farming company and start working like remotely as basically, like a digital nomad. So yeah, it was such a gift.
It is such a gift. I mean, it's amazing where life can take you and where the pandemic can take people just in general. Like, I mean, it's so fascinating to hear. You wear so many hats, being an entrepreneur, an advocate, a speaker. I mean, how do you stay grounded and connected to your original why? I know you've mentioned meditation and the mindset, but yeah, I'd love to dive deeper into understanding and learning about that.
Yeah, I think it's just obviously like being vegan really helps because that's a very strong conviction. Like I really care about animals and I really care about the planet. And I think as you get older, like I'm 45, and so I feel like as you get older, you know yourself more and more and more and more. You have less patience for, like outside noise. It has less influence on you. Your life just becomes more important to be meaningful. Like it's more and more important for me to do things that are meaningful and that align with my values. And the more I do those things, the more things become clear for me. And so again, like this all didn't happen. Like Reuben Shoes started 10 years ago. And before that, like Reuben Shoes started 5 years after I'd already made the decision to start working for myself. And I made the decision to start working for myself in my 20s was because I read the book by Stephen Covey called The Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. And through reading that book, it talks about like knowing your own what's your personal mission statement? What are your personal values? And I identified that my number one value is freedom. And so because I know myself and I'm continuing to do, like I go to like different like self-development like workshops. I've had different coaches over the years, and I'm continually always to invest in my own personal growth and personal development and mindset and spiritual healing. And so I think just through all of those different practices and the facilitators and the people that I've had. And of course, like when I am online, if I'm using Instagram, it's very curated because that's the stuff that like I like and I pay attention to. And so I get more of it. And it's just been an unfolding. But I think the biggest thing is like, once you start doing something, the more that you do it, the more you create more of that thing. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Most definitely. Yeah. Complete sense. I mean, what fascinates me too is in your bio and on Instagram, you have the title to the Nas song, If I Ruled the World. Imagine that. I'm curious to know what would be one thing you'd change.
Animal agriculture, 1000%. You know what's funny about that? When I first created my Instagram account in 2013, that's the first thing I was like, if I ruled the world. And then I was just like, I have not changed that. And I thought about it a couple of times because not everybody even knows that that's like lyrics. But I literally have not changed that in over 10 years. And the number one thing that I would do was eliminate animal agriculture. Because
That's
I also
amazing.
fundamentally believe that how can we expect as humans to live in a world with peace and love and kindness where we experience that, with all the wars that are happening and I do feel like we put a lot of judgment on that and why is this happening? This shouldn't be happening. And yet in most of our daily lives, we are consuming some form of cruelty and violence. And so I truly believe that if we had love and compassion for animals, the most innocent of all beings, we ended animal agriculture, what a dramatic change we would experience in the world and in our lives. And so absolutely 1000% that it would be like illegal to eat animals and to
Yes.
be involved in animal agriculture.
1000% agree. I love it. I couldn't even agree more. Um,
Yeah.
I wanna know as we wrap things up, your favorite vegan meal to eat.
Oh my goodness. Probably like avocado sushi
Ooh,
rolls.
nice. I'm sure they make
Yeah.
really good ones out there.
Yeah, actually, the sushi's not great here, to be
Mhm.
honest. I come from Vancouver, so we have phenomenal sushi in Vancouver.
Oh,
And
yes.
yeah, but that's a really hard question. If I'm making it myself right now, it's just like some sort of like fried tofu with broccoli and rice. I'm a really boring eater because I eat primarily for function and health and my macros and my nutrients. But avocado sushi rolls for sure. If I can find a vegan pho, like with tofu and a veggie
Yes.
broth, I've learned this new type of noodle dish here, which is called laksa, and it's like a mix almost between like pho and ramen. So that is like my new
Mm.
favorite thing is yeah, and Thai food is always delicious. Like if I can find a vegan pad Thai, um, yeah, I love Asian food.
Me too. And I wanna know, where can people reach you?
Yeah, please follow me. It's just my name, Desiree with two E's, Dupuis, and Vos and Co is pronounced like toes with a V. So VOES underscore and underscore co. Would love, love, love to connect with you, whether if you're vegan or whether or not you just care about animals and the planet and want to be more mindful and more conscious. I am really, really, really trying to grow my community of like-minded people, and I'm the one behind our corporate Instagram and my personal Instagram, and yeah, so I'm always reachable. I always love to connect with people.
And one piece of advice you'd like to leave the people listening.
Follow your heart.
Absolutely love that. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us here on Passion Projects. Truly
My
appreciate our
pleasure.
conversation. Absolutely
Me
loved it.
too. Thank you. My pleasure. So fun.
Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode of Passion Projects. I hope Desiree's story reminded you that when passion meets purpose, real change is possible, not just for ourselves, but for the world around us. If you feel inspired, take a moment today to think about what lights you up and how you can take small steps towards it. And don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, and share this episode with someone you think could use a little spark. And stay tuned for some more thrilling episodes. Until then, take care.